Estradiol is the most important female hormone. It regulates your menstrual cycle, sustains your bone density, and fuels your mood, libido, brain function, skin elasticity, and more. Lower estradiol production is what triggers most of the symptoms that you associate with menopause: emotional swings, dryness, hot flashes, fatigue, insomnia, difficulty holding in urine when coughing and laughing. Not surprisingly, estradiol is the primary estrogen used in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So Dr. Bazzan, say you have a woman with low sex drive, low libido. How will you assess and then address her hormones?
Dr. Gottfried, pleasure to be here. Thank you again for being so wonderfully doing helping us with our webinars. So this is a big topic. So let's take it a little bit from the top, and let's talk about ovarian function first. So a girl becomes a woman at a time of what we call menarche, which is the time in which she has her first period. This is the activation of the ovarian hormones, and estrogens are important. There are three main estrogens in human females: estriol, estradiol, and estrone. And as you were saying, we'll be concentrating more on estradiol. This, say, event that happens 10 years old, 11, 12, 13, this is the beginning of the menstrual, the fertile part of a woman's life, which is supposed to end with menopause. And that is supposed to be in the textbook about, say, age 51. So the ovaries are equipped with about 500,000 to 750,000 eggs. And each month, these eggs are going to be either fertilized, and then that begins a pregnancy, or they're not. And if they're not fertilized, then the uterus says, everybody out. And that's what people experience as a period or a menstruation. Usually the problems with hormones quantity are not an issue during the times of fertility. But as women get close to menopause, as I said, say age 51 in the textbook, but you've had, I've seen women, and you're a gynecologist, I'm sure you've seen this a lot, that they begin earlier. And then you have people that go long after the menopause. So, the age 51. Having said that, the problem comes into play, let's say, when the hormonal production from the ovaries begin to decline enough that the person's body is going to have the imbalances. So now let's say now that we're going to that period called perimenopause. This is the time in which kind of the opposite of what the girl became a woman. She had all these big upheavals and, in the brain and in the body. And it kind of happens the same way, only that this is the dying spurt from the ovaries. And so you can have big spurts of estrogen, and at the point you might come down with the hot flashes and the night sweats, or you can get down very quickly and then will be manifested sometimes with not, like you were saying, in vaginal dryness and not being able to hold the urine and all that. Now, we know the age of the person, they come to us, and we take a history. And so the woman will tell us, these are my symptoms, which include a lot of the symptoms that you were saying before. Now it's time for blood work. Blood work is very important because there are certain hormones that by looking at those levels in the blood, it tells us a lot about where the person is situated at. So one hormone, very important hormone, is called the follicular stimulating hormone, which comes out of the pituitary. Now, if we go back to what we were speaking earlier, people should always remember there are three levels. Upper management in the brain, that'll be the brain, the hypothalamus. Then you have middle management in the pituitary gland here, the third eye. And then you got the factory. In the case of the sex hormone, so-called, the factory is either the ovaries in the belly of the women or the testicles hanging outside in the boys. So FSH has very well-known intervals. So we know, for instance, that if a woman's FSH is less than 20, she's probably fine in an estrogen production. Whereas if a woman comes in with an FSH of 70 or 80, that's pretty clearly a telltale sign that the hormone production from the ovary is now declining enough to create the symptoms. Then you actually, as you were saying before, out of the three main human female hormones, what we choose to measure is the estradiol, for a lot of reasons that this is not a medical lecture. So if the estradiol, and what you see is when the woman is younger, you have a high estradiol and you have a low FSH. But then here comes the turn, in which you start seeing that the FSH goes up and the estradiol goes down. So that's very helpful. Now, another thing that you look for is progesterone, because progesterone is also very important, not only for sexual function, but all these hormones. By the way, let's get this out of the way immediately. These hormones are frequently, or were frequently, described as so-called sex hormones. But when a woman is in the middle age, these hormones are even more important in the brain. And as a matter of fact, there's a new field called neurosteroidology that studies the effect of these hormones on the brain. So many times when the women come in and say, I don't know, I cannot recognize myself anymore. I have Alzheimer's disease, I'm fine, I can't find my car keys. Or I'm so anxious and I have no reason why. I cannot sleep anymore and all that. This is all because these hormones, as they go away, they leave the brain kind of malfunctioning. So that will be the estradiol for the estrogens. Now, when you have enough deficiency, because a lot of these body regions are depending on estrogen. So, for instance, vaginal dryness comes because there's not enough estrogen in the tissue, and the tissue gets dry. Same thing, the bladder has a lot to do with estrogen. And so when the estrogen declines, the urethra of the woman doesn't have a whole lot of tissue to hold on to. And so when you cough, you sneeze, and you laugh, it's not able to hold as much as before. The mystery of hot flashes is still very much debated for, to see exactly which is the dysfunction there, but it's pretty common to see hot flashes and night sweats in people whose estrogen is going down. Progesterone is very important because progesterone protects the uterus, other than the fact that it's the hormone of pregnancy, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. In the brain, though, progesterone is extremely important because when people lose progesterone, they start getting insomnia. And they start getting this anxiety that they don't know where it comes from. So I have found women with basically almost zero progesterone already in their late 30s. And I'm sure that that's your experience as well.
Definitely. So I want to circle back with some of these points that you've made, Dr. Bazzan. And as usual, you've taught me some turns of phrase that I've never heard before that I absolutely love. Like this idea that, sort of the loudspeaker says everybody out for your period. I totally love that. Yeah. And you made such an important conceptual point here about the control system for these hormones. You talked about upper management in the hypothalamus, middle management in the pituitary, and how that talks to the gonads. So it talks to the ovaries in women, it talks to the testes in men. And I think maybe my favorite point that you made is the activity of estrogens and progesterone in the brain.